Hi, welcome to the Success NP podcast. I'm your host, Sandra, and today we have Olia. She is a primary care nurse practitioner who is licensed from Ontario, Canada. She completed her Master's of Nursing at PHC program at the University of Toronto. Olia specializes in emergency medicine, and she managed a home healthcare agency servicing the senior population in the Greater Toronto area. She works as a part-time professor, clinical instructor, currently at PHC as a mental health, and she's starting to get involved in the aesthetic industry. So welcome to the podcast. Okay, that's it for that. That's it for that. Happy to have you on. And so again, just tell my listeners a little bit about your story, kind of your background, and kind of what brought you to this spot that you are in today.
Yeah, so I worked as an emergency department nurse for a few years. Loved it, like adrenaline rush, disorganized chaos. But I wanted to move on and do something better. Maybe I was thinking about leaving bedside potentially. I was getting a little burned out. And so my dad actually was like, hey, like, why don't you try NP? And I'm like, yeah, why not? Maybe. Like, I have the needed hours to apply to the program. And so I applied, and now we're here. Now I'm a nurse practitioner, and so far I'm loving it.
Yeah. So how long have you been a nurse practitioner?
I'm literally a baby NP. I graduated last year, and I started working for a few months because school was hard. I went traveling after, and I'm like, it's time to get a job. But
Right. Right.
really new.
That's so great. So the reason why I got super excited about our podcast today was because I really want to talk about that transition from nurse to ARNP. And you're so fresh to it. All the other people on my podcast are seasoned. I want something new. Let's do something fresh. And so I'm hoping that for the listener that's like, oh, this is kind of nice to like think back to that transition, or for the new NP to go, same girl, or for the nurse to go, oh, wow, that's something to be looking forward to. So that's kind of my hope with this podcast episode. So let's just see how it goes. So what motivated you to make that transition from the nurse to the nurse practitioner? I heard that your dad, sweet dad, was looking out for you and recommended maybe that role transition for you, but really you had to do the work. So what was that moment that you were like, it's time, it's time to move?
Yeah, I think I'm a pretty ambitious person from the get-go, and I wanted something more independence. Emergency nursing, it's pretty independent. You work with doctors. You have a lot of like medical directives that you can do without like seeing a doctor first. And I love that. I think I wanted more responsibility, more independent as a nurse. And so it was perfect because of burning out and then going into a field that will allow me to not only kind of leave bedside, but have more responsibility, see patients, diagnose, prescribe. So that was really exciting. New knowledge, I love learning. And yeah, I think that was kind of the main pushing element for me to go into this program.
I hear a couple of things from what you're saying. And one of them is I'm a lifelong learner. I wanted to learn more. I liked the autonomy that I had in the emergency room working alongside physicians, having those standing orders is what we call it here in the States. You have standing orders where they just allow you the autonomy that like, if you see these things going on, just make the call, right? And so hearing that, again, these are really great things to be noticing within yourself to see like, is this role good for me? I think the part that a lot of nurses and can relate to as well is transitioning from burnout, right? And hoping that the nurse practitioner role will have less burnout. So, but our job doesn't come without challenges, right? Like our job has challenges. So what are some of the challenges that you've seen since being an RN to now being in the nurse practitioner role?
So since I'm new, I'm not gonna lie to you, sometimes I don't know what I'm doing like most of the time. And I feel like it's a little scary, especially when I like entered my first job. I'm the only one there. Super scary. Like, do I know what I'm doing? Like imposter syndrome? That's like the main challenge. So, having a tight-knit support group, I was able to reach out to my NP colleagues, my girlfriends, if I have questions or if I need advice or I'm feeling like, oh my gosh, are you feeling the same way? Because we're graduating the same year. So that was really helpful. But yeah, I think to this day, still I'm thinking, oh my gosh, like, am I going to miss something? That fear is kind of in the back of my mind. But I think that makes me better because I'll go and research. I'll make sure I find the answer to make sure I give my patients the best care I can. But I think that's the biggest challenge I'm experiencing so far.
Yeah. And so one of the things that Jackie and I, what we've talked a lot about and why we created the clinical book list that we did is because a lot of nurse practitioners feel exactly the same way. And so you're by yourself. You're like the only one. So you go from being a nurse on the floor where you're like with a sea of nurses that are like rowing the same boat to just like a captain of your own ship and you're a lone nurse and you've got to row the boat. You've got to tell the boat where to go. Like you're doing everything and you're all alone. Right. And so I think one of the ways I'm hearing you say you combated that was talking to other nurse practitioners and having community because
Mhm.
you have to create your own community in that space. That's the only way to create resiliency and to feel like you're not alone. So I love that you shared that. And then the second thing you said was being in that space of I don't know is not a bad place to be because you just said, like, I got to go learn this. Like, I can't just wait for someone to come rescue me. I got
Mhm.
to go rescue myself. I love that you're honing in on that. And so let's see. Let's go down more the confidence route because that's something that I think, as I'm hearing you say, like imposter syndrome, like I don't feel like I know what I'm doing. Every healthcare provider is in that spot. So at the very beginning, even with podcasting, I haven't even listened to my first podcast. I can't. Like I'm sure I sound so ridiculous compared to where I am now. In fact, you're speaking of dads. My dad has told me like he's a diehard
Mhm.
podcast listener of Sandra Padetta, and he said, Sandra, from where you started to where you are is such a world of difference. Well, this is in everything that we do. We start off not knowing and we slowly build the skills. So, how did you build your confidence when you first started seeing patients as an NP, or how are you finding that you're building it now as a new nurse practitioner?
Really great question. So I think to this day I'm still learning, but I got a resource up to date. You probably heard of this.
The best. Yeah.
I have all the books. I'm using up to date a lot. And honestly, it's just with experience. The more patients I see, the easier it's getting. The more I'm like, I know what to do now. Or I'm constantly reviewing assessment skills or I'm just reading up on different articles. So I work in mental health and started doing ADHD assessments. And so constantly updating like best practice guidelines or in the community sometimes be like, oh, look at this article I found. It's really good. So just keeping up to date, going over DSM guidelines. I was like, so if I have time before seeing a patient, I'll look up, be like, okay, maybe they're coming, they want to like depression, anxiety. So I'll look those up again, be like, what am I looking for? Questions I have to ask, just kind of prepare. That's really being really helpful, to be honest. That's kind of like as the main strategy that you.
Yeah, no, that's really great. And one of the things that I've found even in practice today, so even though I work in urology and I understand certain things well,
Mhm.
there's always something that walks in the door that I'm like, oh, that's that. Like, and so again, going back to what do I know? And that's kind of starting that block and then going to what do I need to build from there? And so again, you will slowly start to be able to put those things together. And then over time, you will build that confidence that you need. Like you said, seeing patients, just getting in there, getting your hands dirty, seeing the patients working through it. So say you are uncertain about something. You're like, I don't know. I don't know what I'm doing. I don't know what the right diagnosis is or the right treatment plan. What are some like other strategies that you can get tangibles to a nurse practitioner? I heard you say I go look up stuff before I go into the room. So I'll go ahead and look up the guidelines one last time. Is there anything else that you do? Do you write in notes? Do you have any mnemonics, things that help you in clinical practice?
100%. I have so many templates that I use for, documentation, but it kind of leads my assessment as well. Okay, like don't forget to ask this, or, don't forget to do a mental health exam, for example. So literally all my templates so that if I do break out, I'll be like, okay, what did I forget to ask? But even after the appointment, if I don't know what it is, I will go and I'll consult if I have an opportunity. Sometimes work with doctors like psychiatrists. I'll go consult a psychiatrist or an NP lead, or I'll chat with colleagues. So there's never a point where I'm going to leave the patient hanging. Worst case scenario, you can refer them to someone or send them to Emerge if I think it's something urgent. But yeah, I'll do everything in my power to find the answer and the care patient gets the right care. And if I don't know, then, get someone to see them that know.
Yeah, exactly. And you know what? I love what you just said, the templates, because we actually in our booklet that's rolling out at the beginning of the year, we started creating templates in our booklets. And so because we know that that's what drives the visit, right? So whenever you have an issue like ears, you're like, okay, so what do I need to know for the ears? And so you have to go through that systematic template of I need to make sure I asked about these questions. I needed to make sure I assessed these things. And then I needed to formulate this from where we are. What are the differentials in that? We found that that was something that we were hearing nurse practitioners saying, this is how I see a patient. And so we're like, why don't we help you
Mm.
kind of formulate that? Because the template is key. I use them in practice today when I see a patient that's coming in and I get a referral from a provider that says BPH with what. And so then I know I got to ask these sets of questions to treat this issue, or at least need to make sure that if that's what the nurse or the primary care provider is sending to me, that I am working through making sure nothing else is going on urologically that we might need to treat as well. So I think that's great advice. And then you mentioned something else, mentorship and reaching out to other experienced NPs or MDs in the healthcare field that play a role in helping you transition from that RN to nurse practitioner. And what are some tools that you've been using to kind of get people to get on your team, right? And to help me do this thing.
Yeah. So, obviously first is my colleagues or schoolmates, but we've been kind of lucky here in Ontario. There's this lovely MP who created a community for MPs. She created I guess it's an app. I'd call it MP Circle, and it's free to join. Not only are there like resources you can access, but you can access thousands of nurse practitioners that are part of this network, and they have special like case studies you can review. Obviously, you're not gonna pitch your professionality, but
Yeah.
you can ask for advice and be like, "What do you guys think in this case?" And it's been absolutely amazing. Like I'll read through the cases people are like, it's helping with experience, but honestly, such a great like you're not alone. So in that case, it's been really lucky. I didn't have to like look for something. I just kind of joined. I'm like, wow, this is my advice.
That is amazing. I don't think we have anything like that here in the United States for nurse practitioners to just join. And again, that community part that you're describing and getting in touch with other nurse practitioners is so critical because it's such an isolating role. I feel like, and there's not enough of us, right? There's 4 million nurses and there's like 395,000 nurse practitioners in the United States. I don't know how many you guys have up in Canada, but we are a very small amount compared to how big nursing is. And so I do agree with you that we need to realize that one, as nurse practitioners, we're a part of the big circle of healthcare. We're a big chunk of that, right? And we do we have a very important role in seeing patients because the load on physicians is too high. They can't see everyone that needs to be seen. And again, like you said, I'm going to do my best to find the answer to their problem. Even if it means that I don't know it off the bat, I'm going to go find the answer. I would much rather work with a nurse practitioner. I was going to be honest with me like you are. Like, I don't have the answer to everything. But you know what I am going to do? I'm not going to stop until I find it. Oh, that's a good NP, right? And that's an NP you want working in your corner because you know that even when you leave her office, she's still working on that issue. She's not going to let that die. She's not going to make up some story and just send me home. Like, no, she's going to go like, the answer to that, I'm going to go find this out. I'm going to call them back. And I'm done. I've been wrong about something and I've called the patient back and they're like, wow, you didn't forget about that. I'm like, I needed to make sure I closed the loop on that, not just for you, sir, but for me, And so I think that's really good. One of the things I like about your TikTok page and your Instagram page is that you talk a lot about work-life balance. And I think going back to something I've said on a previous podcast episode, that the role of the RN is not to run to the NP role to prevent burnout, because you'll just become a burned out nurse practitioner and you'll be in a lot more debt. Okay. So that might not be the thing. Okay. So one of the things that I love about your page is that you talk a lot about that you are actively seeking that in your career. And it's something that I think is so vital that you need to realize, one, that I love to hear you say that I was running to the nurse practitioner role mostly because I love to learn. And it was that next step in learning. That's big, right? I love that. But what advice do you have to a new NP about maintaining work-life balance? Because if you're going into a new role, you can so get sucked up into learning about all this and you might kind of lose some of your sense of self with the increased responsibility of your new role. What are some things that you've done to combat that? Attention, all nurse practitioners and NP students. Are you tired of feeling the disconnect between clinical rotations and didactic teaching? Say hello to Success NP's clinical booklet guides.
As NPs ourselves, we know how valuable it is to have a resource that helps bridge the gap between clinical and class. So we created the digital resource to do just that. Our clinical booklets cover 5 major NP tracks: psych, adult, peds, family, and women's health. Success NPs wants to create tools and provide support NPs need to thrive in their careers.
So why wait? Check out our Success NP Etsy shop, linked in the show notes, for our digital guides and other digital clinical resources. Now, let's get back to the conversation.
Definitely not easy, especially when you're usually responsible. You feel like you've missed something. It can get stressful, but trying to leave work at work when you can, going out with your friends, it's always super helpful if you have someone super close that you can vent to. How's your day today? Well, it's challenging, and just kind of talking about it. I find at least it helps me a lot going for a coffee and having those deep chats about life in general, but also not forgetting your hobbies. Go rock climbing, go exercise, travel. Those are kind of the things I found really helpful, but mainly just kind of meeting up with friends, chatting, that supports us.
Yeah. A lot of friends, I think I read somewhere that you don't really need a therapist if you have good, solid friendship that like brings talk to you and share your life with. And again, it's one of those things, like you said, just someone that just kind of hears you, says, okay, yeah, I hear that. That's really tough. And just sits in the pit with you and doesn't try to pull you out necessarily, but gets down there with you and says, this is hard. And again, I know that the role of the nurse practitioner transition from RN to NP is super tough, but just know that there are nurse practitioners out there like Jackie and I that are trying to create stuff to make that role transition easier. And so again, like that NP circle, like joining those things to help make that transition from the one role to the other a little bit more seamless, a little less painful, I think can help. So how has your approach to patient care changed now that you're a nurse practitioner? Are there any aspects of patient care that you find more rewarding in this career than being an RN?
Oh, yeah, it's completely different. It's so different than being an RN versus an MP. I feel like I have more time with the patient. I ask more deliberate questions. My assessment skills are way better, interview skills. And,
Yes.
when they come into my office, I also work at in a walk-in clinic, just sitting there and talking to them without typing, hearing their story. That helps with health history gathering.
Yeah.
But yeah, completely different. And just everything's changed. You feel like you're running the show. Like there's no one to act with yourself, right? Like you're making the decision at the end of the day. They came to you. So it's completely different. I love it.
It's so funny that to hear you say that, because as you become from the RN to the NP, I also feel like, I don't know if you can relate to this, but I feel like it's really rewarding because the role of a nurse practitioner, we have a nursing background, so the heart of caring. And I think the patients know that our heart is really caring. And so I really believe that, yes, you can have true medical issues, but especially in the population that I care for, they almost just kind of want to be heard. And I think, and I know there's been studies that show that a nurse practitioner that listens actually provides a level of therapeutic care just in the listening, right? Just in like somebody just going like, I hear you. I believe you. They're like, okay, you're not that bad. Far back. And if you're like, no, but there is a legitimate thing there. And so just the listening, I think, and being in that position that they know that you're listening in a way that you can be very helpful and prescribe and treat and diagnose and do all the things that nurse practitioners do. But then also the added layer of, no, there's a nurse here at the core. If you boil it down, there's a nurse here that just really cares about me. And I think that alone, I think brings a lot of healing to those interactions with patients that bring me a lot of joy as a provider. So I don't know if you can relate to that, but it's kind of how I feel about it to answer that question myself. So what goals do you have for yourself, Olia, over the next few years as you grow as a nurse practitioner? How do you see your role evolving in the healthcare system?
I want to have an independent practice. So, maybe opening a clinic of some sort, whether it be for childcare.
What it want button? I want the cheering button, so I'm gonna hold it, but I really want to.
But maybe also like an aesthetic clinic, making people more beautiful, feel more like themselves. Yeah, I think maybe in 5-7 years, I'd have either both or one mix open for sure.
I love that.
Well, yeah, kind of some kind of business or as a practitioner.
That's so cool. And honestly, I'd love to hear and have conversations with more nurse practitioners doing this, because it is such a great part of our role that we can become business owners, we can become entrepreneurs, we can take our skills and use them to be our own bosses in a sense, right? Just like you said that day in clinic where you just look and you're like, no, I'm the leader here. And it's really neat to have the skills set and the education to be able to step into that space. Now, that whole space comes with its own issues with business and entrepreneur, and you're going to be learning a whole nother thing, right? It's a good thing you're a lifelong learner, because that'll come. But just knowing that is something that you can aspire to, that's a goal you can set out in front of you, You can actually get there with our degree is so cool. And I just think it's so inspirational. So, closing thoughts, anything you'd like to talk about? We can talk a little bit about, what's one piece of advice for a nurse who is considering getting her advanced practice or her NP degree that you would tell her, like, think about this as you're going into school, just to give her some advice since you're so close.
It's a good question. Things to think about. Would say making sure you really want to do it. Like you really want to become a nurse practitioner. And if you don't know what that means, maybe, talk to a nurse practitioner or find a nurse practitioner to ask questions too. I don't know if shadowing, if certain organizations will allow it, but if they do, you can shadow with doctors just to see like what is the role of nurse practitioner, because I think a lot of people don't actually know. That's like it's in Canada. And then, as long as you know what you want, you want the independence, it's not going to be easy.
Well, yeah,
You still might burn out, but as long as you know you want to move up, you want to learn, and you're not afraid of responsibility and independence, then you will succeed.
one thing I'll even add to that, if you are a nurse that's considering becoming a nurse practitioner, I really want to make sure that you are working on your work-life balance as an RN, that you've got those skills now. Because the skill set will apply very easily in the role of the nurse practitioner. There's going to be a transition period, kind of like what you're describing, right? Like, I'm just kind of in the middle of this imposter syndrome every day at work, and it's just different every day. And I'm like, oh my goodness. And that becomes less and less and less over time. But kind of going back to what you were saying, like making sure that you're working on that work-life balance as an RN, that you've got in the forefront of your mind. I want more autonomy. I want that increased learning. I want that opportunity to be my own boss. If you're looking for that, there's tons of that in being an RN, but in a different way as a nurse practitioner. Make sure you're working on that work-life balance now so that when you step into that new role, it's a skill you've already got. You're not trying to learn that and try to learn everything else to keep your sanity. So yeah, I think that's really good. And then how do you perceive yourself growing and learning as an NP? Is there any resources or networks, communication opportunities that have been special for you?
Oh, yeah. Good question, by the way.
Yeah.
I've been like attending different conferences or different talks that, for example, the Headache Conference, they offer that I think every year. Incredible. It was organized by nurse practitioners as well, which was really cool. And just continuing to learn. It's not just about reading articles and going up to date or talking to your colleagues, like actually attending workshops, conferences. If you want to learn more about dermatology, like find those talks that are presented by specialists and experts in their field. I have found that's really been useful. Not only are you able to build connection, network, the other people in the industry, you're also getting an amazing like talk and information from specialists. So that's been really really useful in developing as a nurse practitioner.
I feel like too, as an NP, when you get stuck kind of in one field, you don't get exposed to anything else. And so it can kind of become, is the word myopic, or you just don't really see as much. And so I think going to those conferences are good because it kind of opens up your eyes to other things. Sometimes you can start to feel like there isn't much else for you to do besides what you're doing until you start to see what other nurse practitioners, you're like, you're doing what? So you've got to get out there. You've got to see what other NPs are doing. Let's do rapid fire. Okay. You know what? If you know, I'm going to do the thing that I've been wanting to do. So let's just go ahead and just sort of get it out. Let's go. Hold on to start going.
Sure.
What are you most grateful for in the whole world?
My family.
Oh, wonderful answer. And if you could have a character play you on a TV show, who would it be and why?
Oh, I don't know. Katniss Everdeen.
Miss Everdeen. Oh,
It's a movie character, but that's the first.
you never know. No, Jennifer Lawrence, you do kind of look like her. That actually works. That actually works. Trying to figure out like what actress you look like. But yeah, I can kind of see that. And then if you could give someone a book to read, what would it be?
When Breath Becomes Air by Paulo Calafini. That one can cry, incredibly well written. Really good
I
book.
think I've read that. Have I read? Is it about somebody that passed away and
Yeah, by a neurosurgeon.
yes, by a neurosurgeon? That book is incredible.
Incredible. I read it twice and like,
Oh my goodness. So good. Yes. Wait, is this the young guy that he's dying and he gets his wife, they have a baby at the end of his life? Yeah. Okay. So everyone's listening. Go check that book out. She's so right. Such a great book. I mean, I've read it one time. I don't think I could stomach it again. It was just so yes, that was to read, but it is definitely a live your life and do what you're meant to do because you never know. I mean, you just don't.
Yeah.
Beautiful, beautiful. So let's get to everyone. They want to know where you are. Where can they find you? Check out your TikToks, Instagram, and yeah, just see your life.
Yeah, I think my handle is Nurse Polik Pollock. So that's the same thing on TikTok or Instagram. So lots of educational material. If you're interested in learning about nursing medicine, come check
Yeah,
out.
yeah, that's from. And we're gonna see your journey. You have to come back on after you've started your practice, and you have to tell everyone about this moment, and you'll just be like, you don't even know. I'm not even imposter syndrome. What? Like I own my own picture. Oh, it's so good, and I can't wait to see your growth over time. It's gonna be really, really great.
Thank you so much. It's been so lovely. Thank you for having me.
Yeah. Thanks for coming on. All right. The success NP quote of the day. All right. Oh, here we go. I like this one. Successful people are not gifted. They just work hard and then succeed on purpose. G.K. Nelson. I like that one. It's deep, right? That's deep. All right, guys. Thanks for hanging out with us and have a wonderful day. Thanks for coming on.